Doing so now. Just give it a couple of seconds to kick on. And here is the link for those who are looking for the captions. You can click that and just turn on the little CC option when you get there. That way our captions won't double up on this. So you go ahead, Ken, whenever you're ready.
All right, thanks a lot. And once again, good evening or good afternoon, wherever you are, whatever time of day it is. I'm Ken Jones, and you're here at the War Industry Resistors Network webinar. And we've been doing these every month for over 4 years now. And this is actually a nice round number. This is number 50. This is our 50th webinar. That's, pretty good, I think. And as you well know, if you've been here before, we have been exploring over these 50 webinars the various aspects of the military-industrial complex. And that includes a variety of things like universities, like the media, think tanks, and also policing. We've done one on Cop City. We've done one on the border, on Arizona-Mexico border with Border Patrol. And this evening, right up our alley, another war industry is ICE. And the title of this program is ICE Wars, Violence, Compassion, and Resistance. And I guess we should say that we've conflated ICE with Border Patrol, because Border Patrol is very much an actor in Minneapolis. This is a program about Minneapolis. And our presenter is an organizer there and has been active in the streets. And this is Pam Costain. Hope I pronounced your name correctly, Pam. She lives in Minneapolis. She's been a lifelong peace and social justice activist, founder of Women Against Military Madness. She's the executive director of the Resource Center of the Americas, has been for 14 years, and a founder and training director of the Wellstone Action for 5 years. Currently very active with Twin Cities Indivisible. So this evening, we're going to do a bit of a interview format, and I'm just going to go back and forth, prompting Pam to talk to us about various aspects. And after we go for a little while, just Pam and I will open it up to Q&A, and we'll see how that goes. And usually we go for an hour, but if we can go, I don't know, Pam, if you can go a little longer, sometimes sure. If someone warrants it, we can go past that. So, okay, so first question, Pam. Tell us what it feels like. Tell us what it looks like. Give us some specifics about what ICE and Border Patrol are doing there in the streets and the neighborhoods.
Sure. Well, thanks everybody for your interest in this. Some of you may have experienced ICE and Border Patrol and others not. So I'll try to be as specific as I can. So I live in a town of 420,000 people. Next door is St. Paul, a little bit smaller than that, but we are less than 1 million people in the main core cities. And up until December 1st, we had 150 ICE agents here. And starting on December 1st, we got a surge, which has resulted in 3,000. To give you some perspective on that, we have 600 people in our police force. So we have 3,000 ICE agents and 600 people in our police force. So it's unbelievable. It's an armed occupation. It feels like an armed occupation, and it feels extremely militarized. So when you see an ICE agent, first of all, they are always all masked. They have no identification on them, so we don't know who they are. We don't know if they're Border Patrol or ICE. Sometimes they're wearing a flak jacket, sometimes not. They're in full combat fatigues. They wear helmets. They all carry Glock pistols. They often carry automatic weapons. They often have, masks, not just masks covering their faces, but masks for tear gas and that kind of thing. It's really frightening, and it does feel like an armed occupation. When they are out there, they are armed with many things. They're armed with, I'm just looking at my notes, stun grenades, rubber bullets, pepper spray, pepper balls, tear gas, the whole gamut of what one can use in, they say crowd control, but really in a combat situation, anything you need against the enemy. And they're everywhere. They are crawling in our neighborhoods. If you can imagine a small community having 3,000 armed agents, they are everywhere. They're in our alleys, they're in our streets, they are cruising our schools, they are cruising our hospitals, they are everywhere, and they are doing their dirty work. And really, they target anyone who's black or brown without discrimination. They're targeting people who are citizens, they're targeting people who are already in some legal status but not yet citizens, and they're targeting undocumented people. So that's the reality we're living through. They go into houses without warrants. You may have been following this, but they now say that if they have an administrative warrant, they can come into your house. It's completely illegal and unconstitutional. They will come up to your car, and if you don't immediately roll down your window or respond to them, they will take the butt of the gun and smash your car window. And so it's just frightening and upsetting and really unnerving. And what it has meant is that many, many people, not just undocumented people, but people who are black and brown, who are in some sort of legal status, it's unclear, are in hiding. They're basically sheltering in their homes right now and can't come out. So that's what it looks like. That's what it feels like. It's scary and it's upsetting and it's illegal, frankly.
Yeah. I can imagine there's a lot of fear, but a lot of the videos we see are pretty inspiring too. Like people are being pretty courageous there on the streets, showing up and trying to protect others. That's organized. I know it is. So why don't you give us an idea of this? What I guess the term I've heard is civic resistance.
Yeah,
How it's organized there. I guess there must be training and what it looks like and all that.
Okay, and Ken, before I do that, I actually wanted to give just a couple examples, and I forgot to do this before we moved here, of just how this has impacted people, just to paint a picture more personally. So there was a family of 6 that were driving home from a basketball practice with their kids, and they ended up in an ICE action inadvertently. They just drove into it, and there were stun grenades, which kind of blew up right in front of their car. There were chemical agents being let go, and the chemical agents were so serious that the family's 6-month-old child, which was in the car, stopped breathing. They got out of the car. They had to give the child CPR. They couldn't be believed. They weren't believed that they were just civilians driving through. So that's like one example of people that get caught in it. The other thing I would tell you about, and you may have even seen a picture of this, there was an older Hmong gentleman who was sleeping one day in his house, and ICE entered. They broke down the door. They used a battering ram to go in. He was asleep, napping in his living room. They insisted that he was a sex offender, when in fact he was a 30-year U.S. citizen with no criminal record. They weren't interested in his story. He was in his boxer shorts and sandals, and they took him outside in a Minnesota winter, and a grandson threw a blanket over him. So that's the kind of just outrageous and unruly action that we see every day, some of which is photographed and some of which is not. So again, that's the life we're living. But what you said, Ken, is true, is there's been an unbelievable level of civic resistance here. So what I want to first thank is the people of Chicago who experienced ICE before we did and had an extraordinarily good game plan for how to respond to ICE. So if you are not aware of them, you should be aware of States at the Core and Defend Rogers Park. Those of you who may be threatened by ICE know about them. But they came in and they started training us in Minneapolis right away. So we have 11,000 people now in our state, but mainly in the metro area, that are trained in ICE Watch. So I want to tell you a little bit about what ICE Watch is. You go through a training about how to respond, and you are trained to basically be somebody who's watching your own neighborhood. You can also be what we call commuters, which are people who travel around the city trying to find ICE. These are the very bravest, youngest, most audacious people among us, but they're the commuters. And if a commuter sees something that they think is suspicious, either a car generally like an explorer with an out-of-state license plate or no license plates. They dare to drive without license plates, obviously. They call that license plate into a central place. There have been young people out gathering license plates on ice. You know, they have hundreds of license plates now. If the central nerve system says, yes, that's ice, they then know they're following ice, an alert is put out, and within minutes, literally within minutes, 20 or 30 people might show up to support that. If they're mobile, then the car following them just does it. But if they have stopped to apprehend somebody, I can tell you that in 5 to 10 minutes, 30 people will be there watching with whistles, with blaring their car horns, and if there's nothing you can do to stop an armed federal agent once they're doing this abduction. But then the videotaping starts to happen, and the videotaping is really critical because this is how we are documenting the atrocities for the future, how we know what they are doing, and all of these videos are then sent to a central database, and it's a phenomenal system. We learned all of this from people in Rogers Park. I want to go over a little bit the system, just very briefly. If you want to do the training, you should, but they operate out of a system that they call Salute. And so every time there's an ICE action, those who are watching it are trying to do the following things. They follow the Salute protocol. So S means they describe the size and the strength of the operation they're seeing. So are there 2 officers? Are there 20 officers? Are there 12 officers? That kind of thing. So S is the size and strength. A is the activity and action. So what exactly are they doing? L is the exact location they are. And it's not just, I'm somewhere in this near a park or something, but exactly where you are. U is the uniforms that are being worn. Again, they aren't always identified, but sometimes they have ICE, sometimes they have Customs and Border Protection. Sometimes they say police, which is extremely confusing to people in the city. So the uniform, then T is the time and date of the activity, and E is the equipment and the records that are being kept. So all of this information, in addition to the videotapes, is then sent in to a central location. And again, this is how we as just ordinary people are tracking this militarization of our city. And we do this because literally tens of thousands of people now, we think we have 80,000 people in signal groups broken down by very specific geographical areas. So if ICE comes to your neighborhood, you only get an alert for your neighborhood. You don't know about something in a neighborhood 2 miles away. So it is a very decentralized, very nimble, very clever system that gets people out tracking their own neighborhood. So that's how we are fighting back. Maybe I could just say a little bit about one day in the life of this, which was the day that Renee Good was murdered. I live, unfortunately, a half a mile from George Floyd Square and a mile from where Renee Good was murdered. So it's been a pretty intense time in my life. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning, maybe 9:30. I don't know what I was doing. I got an alert that there was, really dramatic ICE activity about a mile away, and that ICE had shot someone. At that point, no indication that that person had died, just as that she'd been shot. I got there within 15 minutes, and there were already probably 200 people there. And frankly, the crowd was really, really, really upset because this was the first time we were aware of a shooting connected to ICE activity. It went through the crowd that the woman was probably dead. We didn't know it for sure. The Minneapolis police were there to try to secure the crime scene, but it was misunderstood by a lot of people protesting because they thought they were up against the Minneapolis police. So very confusing. Because of my peace work, I've done a lot of de-escalation training and a lot of training of others. And so I went to work right away doing de-escalation training. I probably talked 8 men with a lot of testosterone down, trying to get them to quit yelling, to quit screaming, to And we actually found that as we interacted with Minneapolis police and the sheriff's department, that we actually got them to get their SWAT team out of there, which was their first impulse. Then we got them to get relaxed with the crowd. They took their hands off their guns. They took a relaxed posture, and we were really successfully able to work with local law enforcement to have the crowd settle down. We actually asked officers, take your hands off your guns, don't do this. We don't need to be rattled anymore. And ultimately, that's how the police officers responded. So what I would say about the resistance is we have been incredibly disciplined. We know that Trump and his operation want us to overreact. They want us to have a riot. They want us to create some excuse for them to come in with the guard from Texas or the guard from Louisiana or whatever. So our civic resistance has been very disciplined, very on message, very nonviolent consciously, and done just with a lot of unity and focus, which I think has kept things in a really good place here. So, but every time they escalate, it's very, very hard for people to keep their cool. And especially for young people who are tracking them the most and who are seeing the most, it's really hard, and we have to work hard at providing emotional support for those younger people, and also, just helping take care of them so that they can go out another day and keep their own cool. So that's what it feels like in terms of civic resistance.
Yeah, and before we began the program, we were talking about people who are released from jails. You have a system set up to help people who are getting released to find them and to help them as they get out.
Yeah, so Brian mentioned that you're already doing this in Massachusetts, and it's really remarkable because we came to this a little bit late. There happened to be, the Whipple building is the federal building, which is the detention center. It's a hellhole, honestly, right now. It's overcrowded. They're not feeding people. They're sick. They're cold, etc. And there was a woman who was going out there, just a non-political, ordinary person who was going out to actually feed the protesters. She'd go out with snack bars and that kind of thing. And one day she happened to see somebody looking just a little dazed and confused outside the Whipple building. And she found out that what the feds do is they release people without a phone, without money, in some cases without a coat, depending on how they were arrested, and without any kind of notification of their family. So these people are literally standing in the cold and don't know what to do. This woman found them, and from that she started a project called the Haven Project, in which now there's a whole, several dozen people who bring burner phones, food, cars, etc., and they just are there 24 hours a day waiting for people to be released from detention. And when they find those people, they get them in a car, they get them warm, and they'll drive them wherever they need to go. In some cases, people have been driven a couple of 100 miles to get home. So that is something that we learned late, but we did learn it, and it's been a really marvelous project. Yeah.
And that sort of runs into the next topic we might talk about, which is mutual aid.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of people who aren't going to leave their homes, immigrants, people brown, people black, whoever, non-conforming people. And so I know that you have a system to help people who are hiding out. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, thanks for that question. There's a civic resistance side, which is meeting ICE right where it's at, and then there's the helping people side that we've had to develop a whole system. And I would say there are literally now thousands of people who are sheltering in place. They have not left their homes for maybe 4 or 5 weeks. They have children. They had a job. They don't feel that they can go to a job. They don't necessarily feel safe sending their children to school. And so we had thousands of people sheltering in place. So the first thing that started happening is people began delivering groceries to those who have not left their home, and it's been enormously successful. Even our local food shelves basically don't have people coming in anymore. All the groceries are delivered out to people who are sheltering in their homes. And this goes for people who are U.S. citizens who just don't feel, if they're not white, they don't feel comfortable going out anymore. So there's a whole home delivery system. Then that has just blossomed into all kinds of things. We take children to and from school. We patrol our schools. So there's a whole set of people. I actually was looking at there's 3,000 patrol shifts every day for Minneapolis public schools. So that's for recesses and the beginning and ending of school. We try to meet other needs of people who are sheltering in place. So maybe they need medicine picked up, maybe they need an errand run, all that kind of thing. But that is all coordinated again on signal chats. We have separated the people who do the active ICE watch from the people doing mutual aid, because the feds are taking our license plates and our identities and they're doing facial recognition. And so those people who are doing ICE watch are not the same people who are doing mutual aid, so we can protect people that are in their homes. I have one family that I support, and again, I'm one of thousands, and I bring their child home from school 3 out of 5 days of the week, and I bring them groceries every week, and then I get them medicine if they need it. So there's a real buddy system. And the beauty that I want to say for any of you who have maybe not been involved in mutual aid is it's the mutuality of it. It's the relationship part of it. It's the reciprocity that is just outstanding. You know, that you get to know a little kid and you get to know their family. And it really has broken down a lot of barriers in our community. So recently, it's so interesting. Now people are doing people's laundry, because many low-income people are living in houses where they go to the laundromat to get their laundry done. They can't leave even to go to the laundromat, and so people are picking up their dirty clothes and bringing them clean clothes, either by taking them to the laundromat or taking them home and washing them. We now have carpenters who are voluntarily going into homes and fixing the broken down doors and the broken windows. We have tow truck drivers who went. What ICE will do is they might apprehend somebody in the middle of the street and they'll just leave the car there, and sometimes idling, but for sure leave the car there. We have tow truck drivers who go to that car, try to figure out who that car belongs to, and return the car to the family. We have now doctors who are starting to make house calls because so few children are coming into clinics for basic preventive care, much less, necessary medical care. And we even now are developing a system of midwives, because undocumented women do not feel safe going to a hospital to deliver a baby. That's how bad it is. But the good part is we have learned as a community to provide those services to people and to bypass institutions, if you will, and just directly provide the services. So the other thing I just heard about in the last couple days is apparently $5 million sky miles. We're on Delta here, so 5 million sky miles have been donated, so that often people are taken from here to Texas for detention, and so these sky miles are being used once people are released, because oftentimes there was no reason for them to be left there, but they were. Then these sky miles are being used to bring people home. And then finally, we have this remarkable thing happening right now called the Singing Resistance. There are between 4,000 and 5,000 people who take part in the Singing Resistance, and they are learning songs. Last Sunday, they had an event where they walked through downtown Minneapolis, where there are many hotels that are housing ICE agents, and they sang outside the hotels, asking people to defect. And so, people do what they can do. If they're artists or musicians or carpenters or tow truck drivers, they find a thing that they can do to help. So it's been an incredible experience in community.
There's a beautiful thing going on there. I mean,
Yeah.
in the midst of the evil, nasty thing, there's this beautiful response in so many ways that you're just describing.
Yeah.
I have a question as you mention all this, and it's about money. It's like, so here come tow truck drivers, and here come doctors, and here come all these people who are normally paid for their services. So is there sort of a system of I mean, are they volunteering? Or are they getting paid? And how does that, is there an exchange of money? Is there a system where money's funneled to people?
So almost everything that I mentioned, there is no money involved. People are just using the service or the skill that they provide normally without compensation. So a tow truck driver isn't getting paid or a carpenter isn't getting paid. There is a big effort at raising money right now, and I'm glad you mentioned that, and that is rent. So people have now been in their homes for over a month. Rent was due in February. It's going to be due in March, and so huge amounts of money are being raised to pay people's rent, and it's all cash, and it's a trust system. So, for example, on my block alone, and I'm talking about just one block, two sides of a block from 40th to 41st Street in my town, we raised $30,000 on one block to fund the rent for 6 families for 2 months, and also to give them a little extra. And we did it by saying, giving ourselves, but also going to our networks of people who don't live here in Minnesota and saying, hey, trust me on this. This money is all going to go to somebody who needs it. We know the people who are going to get it. They are actually friends and neighbors, and we were able to raise $30,000, and that's one block. So there's a massive money ask going out for rent, and it's really been quite remarkable.
Nice. So is there a central place people can donate?
So there's a big thing, and if I can find it before we end, there's a big kind of centralized place where people can donate money, but a lot of it is again done in these really very local networks, because then we can guarantee to people that there's no overhead, there's no staff, there's no anything. It's just money direct. But if I have a second here, I will look up the.
No, Pam, after the webinars, I always send out a follow-up email, and
Okay,
it'll have the recording link, and I can put that link for donation into that
great,
email.
great.
Goes to our entire email list, not just the people on the webinar right now.
Yeah,
So we
okay,
can do it that way too.
great.
Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? And what are we missing in terms of the resistance? Is there something other than what you've mentioned that you might think about? And one thing comes to my mind, which is surveillance. Obviously, we talk about facial recognition and so forth. And my guess is they're on social media watching you. Maybe there's a concern about signal, people being infiltrated. Maybe there's a concern about undercover agents. I mean, what's the thinking about the surveillance system that's certainly bound to be happening?
Well, you know how much money these folks have, the billions of dollars they have. So of course they have the most advanced technology one could possibly imagine. But and so we know we're being surveilled, and they have very advanced facial recognition. They're now scanning people's license plates, as I mentioned, all of that. But the interesting thing is, we just had people out in their parking lot scanning their license plates and putting them in, and we almost were matching them person for person. They have all this money, all this technology. We have dedicated people. So I think there has not been, we just almost can't worry about it at this point. What we do is in signal groups, we've gotten tighter about vetting people. So in a very localized signal group, you wouldn't get in unless somebody said, yeah, that's my spouse, that's my neighbor, that's my cousin. Then you get in. Signal groups used to be very loose on the front end, and kind of anybody was in. We know they're in there, but there's been a lot more vetting going on signal groups, and they're not tight, but they're well run, and I think people feel like it's the best we can do. Yeah.
So what about lessons learned? What people are thinking about when it comes to our town, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
learned from Chicago, but had there been some things that jump up in your mind about, listen, if this happens to you, keep this in mind and keep this in mind. Lesson?
Yeah. I mean, again, I would go back to, I have so much admiration for the group States at the Core, and their trainings. We've had a lot of trainings here, but I think they're the best. And I would encourage people to get trained now, because especially if you live in a blue area of the country, that's who they're going after. If you live in, I don't know, Arkansas, they're not going to come after you, but if you live in any of the blue areas of the country, there's a high probability they will come. It's not necessarily guaranteed. I think the lessons have been learned. A couple things for me is, one is the power of self-organization. I cannot believe what I have seen in the last 2-3 months in terms of self-organization and the capacity that we all have to meet the moment if we are threatened enough and we are unified enough. So self-organization is, I've been in the nonprofit world my whole life, and nonprofits do good work, but I have never seen anything like the self-organization that I've seen in this. So that's one thing. The strategic nonviolence that is being practiced by our movement is really impressive, and I think people need to embrace that and be proud of that, because we have not collapsed into reaction. We have kept, our eyes on the ball. So that's another lesson that's been learned, and we have to really keep, as I mentioned, keep reinforcing it, because there's lots of reasons for people to go off the deep end right now. And we don't. We give them a lot of support. I would say, here's something I've thought a lot about, because I've done a lot of solidarity work in my life, is that I had never been on the receiving end of solidarity before, and it is extremely powerful. It is extremely powerful to live in a place that's under siege and have somebody you knew back in college, or your cousin, or your long lost friend, to get in touch with you and say, I'm thinking about you. And so the power of solidarity is so obvious to me now that I am living where you sort of think you know you're not alone, but it sometimes feels like you're alone, and then somebody reaches out or sends you $100 or does something, and you so power of solidarity. And then I just think I have learned that there is a role for everyone. There's a role for the artists, the clergy, the tradespeople, the unions, the teachers, the caregivers. I mean, there is really a role for everyone, and that's been a beautiful thing to learn, because I think we rely on institutions a lot to take care of people, and what I've learned is actually we have huge capacity to take care of one another alongside those institutions. I wouldn't say in place of those institutions, but alongside them. So I say that I don't think Trump and Bovino and all of them, Holman now, have any idea that what they unleashed in us was great capacity and great love and great solidarity, and it'll beat their armed intervention, hands down. Not maybe right every day, but it will beat their armed intervention ultimately, because we have a power greater than they do, and they don't understand that power. Because they operate in fear, we operate in love, we operate in compassion, and it's greater than their weapons. So, yeah.
I love that. That's a lot of wisdom there, Pam. Thank you. So we're going to go to Q&A, but before I have actually, I guess this is a combination comment and question, something for you to respond to, and maybe I'm sure you've given it some thought. So we know that what's happening in Minneapolis is part of something much bigger. It's part of white supremacy. It's part of, as you mentioned, the blue states. It's part of intimidating an electorate. It's part of the suppression of dissent that comes with growing fascism in the world. It's part of the profiteering of the prison industrial complex, and of the surveillance and weapons industry. And, there's a collapsing empire. The United States empire internationally is not what it once was. So there's a lot going on here that's sort of Minneapolis and Minnesota are kind of like the tip of the spear, and it's sort of a focal point of a lot of things going on that in the larger world. And we also know that what's going on with the genocide in Palestine and what's going on in Israel. Israel is connected to a lot of this because they train our police. I'm certain that they train ICE and Border Patrol. And of course, their surveillance technology and their weaponry is made to suppress dissent. So that's a lot of comment from me. And I just wonder, I mean, I know you all must be thinking about these very things. How do you think, what's your response to all that?
Well, I didn't think they were going to steal the election a couple months ago. I now think they're highly capable of it. It's been a real lesson in what they're going to try to do. I don't say that with any pleasure because I really don't like to go there, but I think they will stop at nothing. I think they are racist to the core, just unbelievably racist and cruel to the core in a way that I could not have even imagined. I think that for those of you who've been part of this conversation, Indivisible's been part of it, and others, about the pillars of support for fascism and authoritarianism, I think we have seen that we have to keep attacking those pillars. So we are majorly going after Target as our home corporation, not because they're the worst, but because they're ours and they're a pillar. So we have to have the corporate community collapse in their support for them. I had mentioned to you earlier, Ken, that in terms of, kind of prison industrial complex, there are Core Civic and some other prison people who build and run these prisons who we need to go after. They're making an enormous amount of money off the misery of people. So I think that's clear. I know far less about sort of the armaments and everything. The other thing I would say is in all of these towns, there are institutions that are collaborating. So for example, Enterprise rents them their cars. So we've been going after Enterprise. The whole hotels rent them rooms. So we've been trying to go after the hotels. When we see ICE trying to eat in a restaurant, we go in and we try to encourage the owners to get them out. And I think that's been successful too. And so small businesses have really taken up the mantle. Corporate interests have not, but it's still we have to keep going after them because they are one of the things holding up this authoritarian regime. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to Q&A now for a little while. I've got 8:40. That gives us plenty of time. The way we usually do it, and we'll do that again this time, is if you go to the reaction button, you can digitally raise your hand, right? You can see one person's done it already. And yeah, thank you, Brian, for demonstrating that. And but we've also had some questions this time in the chat as we've gone along. And so we have asked my partner Melody to track that, and I think Brian might be doing it too. But why don't we go to the questions that have already happened in chat first? But Brian, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something first?
Oh, sure. Well, first off, and can y'all hear me? Okay, great. First of all, I just want to thank you, Pam, and all the people of Minneapolis and across Minnesota who have been resisting this, because I think they are really inspiring people across the country, and we have a lot to learn. My question is, we've recently had some changes in state law here. I think part of the reason we were finally able to achieve that, and we still need to go further, was because of the inspiration from the actions of people just like you. Are there efforts in Minnesota and Minneapolis to try and change state and local laws to extend rights and add protection to vulnerable neighbors who are under attack by ICE, CBP, DHS?
I mean, there are, and I'm not the most up to date on that. I feel like I'm day to day trying to keep on top of things. But there are definitely things. I mean, for a year, we've said the masks have to come off ICE. This is so totally ridiculous. It's not professional law enforcement to wear a mask. So masks and identification, they don't stop their actions, but they provide a lever of accountability. So I think that that's really important. The courts have been important. Our Attorney General, Keith Ellison, is outstanding. He's in court all the time, trying to defend us. The courts, as you know, are a mixed bag. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's not helpful at all. We don't know what happens when it gets to the Supreme Court, but I think the courts are an essential lever here in terms of protecting people's rights. Our Attorney General is trying to make the case that states are sovereign entities in the Constitution, and the feds cannot come in and do whatever they want in a state. I think it's an important distinction. I'm learning more about the Constitution than I ever knew before. So yeah, I think there are both legislative and judicial remedies to be pursued. The question is, can we do it fast enough?
Thank you.
So let's bring Melody in. And Melody's been tracking the questions in the chat. And Melody, do you have, can you post some questions for Pam that come from the chat?
Yeah, there was a question about whether there are actual specific people that are doing specific legal observing. I've heard the term constitutional observing in the last couple of days. And are there people that specifically are looking for violations of people's rights?
So yes, we have literally thousands of constitutional observers, thousands of people. I think 30,000 people have been trained in constitutional observing. But here is the actual thing. Constitutional observing works when the operation is small and discreet and you can get there and, you know what I mean, it's under control. There might be an abduction happening, but it's 2 people, etc. And so there was all this training done to help people be observers and to know their constitutional rights and to videotape. But things escalated here so quickly and got so violent that constitutional observing, we needed more tools than that. We needed to be able to monitor them better. We needed to document them better. And so that's why this ICE Watch effort sort of eclipsed constitutional observing. I don't in any way want to denigrate it, but it is not sufficient when the level of escalation is as high as it's been here. It's too polite, honestly. Constitutional observing works when, you know, again, you're in a situation where you might have 20 agents in an area and, you know, they pick up somebody every other day. But once they're moving in groups of 20 and 30 and they're violent and everything, constitutional observing feels a little impotent sometimes. That's when we start whistling and yelling and blaring our horns and in some cases trying to get in their way. Yeah.
And another question was about whether federal agents are targeting protesters at this point, and also people who are maybe speaking out against, you know, the current administration and the president.
Excellent question, and the answer is yes. And that's just changed in the last week or so. You know, they pulled Bovino, who was just an outright fascist, out of our area. They put him in some office and gave him a retirement. He was horrible. Since he left, Tom Homan has come in. And what we've seen is much more emphasis on those of us who are resisting than was there before. So they are arresting people for just being there. They're doing trumped up charges. They might push people, and then if they react at all, they arrest them. So we're feeling very much right now that the attention is turning not to us and not the immigrants. They're still the primary focus, but we are seeing that they are going after the people who are resisting now. And, you know, we have to catch up to that strategy and tactic. Yeah.
Someone in the chat asked whether landlords or renters are being appealed to waive rent for some people.
There is an effort for a rent moratorium here. It's controversial. Some people, it's even among progressives, it's controversial. Some people think it's a good strategy. Other people don't. Our city council is trying to pursue a rent moratorium. what we find, I thought what you're going to say is like, would landlords, give up somebody, and they're too interested in getting their money to give up somebody. So as long as they're getting paid, they're happy. They don't care where it comes from. So we're not worried about landlords that way. But there is an effort at a rent moratorium. I don't know enough about it. I just know that good-hearted people disagree about that as a strategy.
And somebody asked about how Target specifically helps ICE.
Yeah, so first of all, the thing with Target is they gave $1 million to the Trump inauguration. In January of last year, a year ago, they eliminated all their DEI commitments, like many did. But that was really tragic to us because we always knew them as a very progressive and socially conscious corporation. Then in the ICE surge, they have ICE is sometimes staged out of their parking lots, and they have not protested. And in one case, ICE agents actually came into one of their stores and arrested 2 of their employees, and they said nothing. And so there's just a lot of disappointment in Target, and people feel like we do still have some leverage with them, and so there's a lot of focus on them, both here and across the nation. If you have Targets in your area, we'd appreciate, some interaction with the stores and that kind of thing. So it's not that they're the worst, it's that they're a domino, which if they finally came to their senses, it would really make a difference in the corporate community. So they're a big focus for us.
And show support for the community, I assume,
Yeah,
since they're
yeah.
homegrown. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but again, there's so many bad actors. There's an airline called Signature Airline that is doing the detention. I mean, the flights to Texas and that kind of thing. So there's just, money, 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 and people take it and do awful things.
Okay, so next question is, and I'm not sure what the well, I'll read it and then you can I can speak to it. Can you talk more about providing emotional support? What support is being provided? What needs are you finding, and how are you meeting them in the middle of everything? I don't know if Carol meant the support for you all or support for the people who are being targeted, but you can maybe address both.
Yeah, actually, I just learned about this from somebody who's more in the center of the signal groups. But there are signal groups of emotional support for various people, for the commuters, for the people who have observed violence, for immigrants themselves. There are helping professionals who are in signal groups and offering their services just like a carpenter might. And those services are being targeted to different groups that have different needs. It's different if you're somebody sheltering in place versus somebody who is non-immigrant but has just witnessed a lot of violence. I don't know much more about it than that, but I do know it's happening.
Yeah.
And then I think in general you will find at demonstrations and everything quite a lot of care and concern for one another. Quite a lot of care and concern. Yeah.
And somebody asked whether the strikes have had any impact, the general strike.
I mean, it was remarkable. I mean, first of all, we had 75,000 people out at 16 below zero. And we had hundreds of businesses that closed that day. I mean, literally hundreds of businesses that closed. No big corporations, but a lot of people took time off from their jobs in larger places. But, restaurants and service industry places were just remarkably kind. Hardware stores and, I don't know, auto shops and that kind of thing, putting signs in their doors. So it was a really major step forward. And I think it brought new people in. My favorite restaurant that I wouldn't have imagined, closed down that day and made a beautiful statement about their commitment to our community. And it made me want to go there even more. So I think it was enormously successful in terms of enlarging the number of people who are demonstrating their care.
Good. And I think one last one that I can find here, Ken, is about so this sort of self-organizing that's taking place there. What's the leadership look like? And I asked that partially from experience that we've had here in Asheville after Hurricane Helene. the incredible, people coming forward, locally, and then people coming from all over the country to help, it had that similar feel. It was just like all of these different initiatives were, cropping up everywhere, and there was eventually a coordination issue. So I was curious about, what the leadership looks like and the coordination, and maybe it's not necessary, but just
Yeah.
curious.
Well, yeah, if I were younger and pursuing a PhD, I'd do a PhD on what's happened here. Because it is, on the one hand, completely leaderless, and on the other hand, leaderful. There are so many people who have stepped up into leadership, but nobody is doing it out of position or rank or, organization or whatever, on the one hand. So there's tremendous decentralization of leadership. There are prominent organizations here. Some of them are labor organizations. SEIU is prominent. Teachers are prominent. Indivisible, Women's March, 5051, all of those organizations do what they do and have turned over everything they do to this. But there's a remarkable lack of needing credit. Now, I don't know what that means going forward, because we're in a crisis. Once the crisis subsides a little bit, I don't know if it gets funky. But right now, so much leadership has emerged. Sunrise has also been really incredible. Those of you in other parts of the country, I would say the anti-authoritarian movement skewed very old for a while, and now that we are in this, we are just overwhelmed with the number of young people who are with us. I think it's brought the young people who are concerned with Gaza into the anti-authoritarian project now, which has been wonderful. So, but the decentralization of leadership is kind of a phenomenon to behold for me.
And someone asks in the chat just now about sort of, are there conservative? I mean, is it across the spectrum in terms of political, in terms of people's participation and supporting community members, or
Well,
is
I
it?
mean, yes and no. I mean, it's overwhelmingly progressive, but I think, and this is what I'm going to put my Indivisible hat on right now. In Indivisible, everyone is welcome. And I think we have practiced that. So if you voted for Trump but you're not happy anymore, you are welcome into this. Or you wanted to stand on the sidelines because you thought this was all going to go away, you are welcome here. I'll tell you one story that is interesting to me. So in rural Minnesota, like a lot of rural parts of the US, farmers were overwhelmingly supporting Trump. Farmers in Minnesota, particularly dairy farmers, rely on Mexican labor for their large dairy farms. And those people cannot come to work. They've disappeared. And so we have immigrant rights organizations out in rural areas now talking to dairy farmers about, come on in to the project of getting rid of these authoritarians, because you have now seen that they're actually not operating in your interest. And actually, these Mexican workers on your farm were really good workers, and you need them and you know it. And so there's been some opportunities for organizing that have emerged. Yeah.
Yep. So Ken, you want to go to the hands that are?
Yeah, let's do that. And then I can see questions still rolling in on the chat too. So if you want to catch up on that.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so I see 3 hands. Now, Jeffrey, actually one of your questions has been answered. I see you had 3 questions and answered in the chat. So why don't we take the 2 others first? John, it looks like Ivins is your last name. You want to come in and unmute yourself and ask your question? You need to unmute yourself.
John, a little blue box should pop up for you that will ask you to unmute. There you go. You got it.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Early on, you mentioned that there are employees of hotels, restaurants, rent-a-car agents, other people who are involved in providing housing and food and other services for the ICE agents who are temporarily residing in whatever city they're occupying. I'm reminded of Upton Sinclair's quote, "It's hard to understand something when your salary depends on your not understanding." My question is, how do we approach employees of these corporations who are providing these services to ICE agents?
Great question. So I'll give you a couple examples. There's been a lot of effort to talk to enterprise frontline workers. Just go in when it's not busy, talk to them, ask them how they feel about it, put a little bit of doubt in their minds and that kind of thing. Assure them that they are not the problem, that it's the corporation that's the problem. So there's a lot of just personal conversations going on. We know that there is great turmoil within Target right now. Because it's a very diverse workforce, and store leaders are by and large not old fuddy-duddies. They know their people, and so we know there's letters and conversations and everything within Target. We think that's essential, that has more power than we have from the outside. So I think the main thing is we cannot demonize anybody who could be on our side. That we have to be very strategic. So I was at a sit-in in Target last Saturday, and I interacted a lot with Target kind of management, middle management, and I said to them over and over again, our beef is not with you, it's with your CEO. I'm not asking them to tell me anything. They can't. They're representing their store or their company, but making really clear where the dividing lines are, and just talking to people like human beings, treating them with respect, treating them with dignity, and yet sort of saying there's something really wrong with the workplace that you're in. The hotels are a little harder because first of all, they tend to be franchises, and also they're just harder to get at the ultimate decision makers. We're concerned about the many black and brown people who clean the rooms and that kind of thing, who are there with ICE agents. We're just trying to figure that one out, and have not been able to figure it out, honestly.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah.
How about Mary Sifferlin? Mary, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hello, can you? Okay. Yeah, I had a question about ICE breaking people's windows. If they don't have a warrant, is that legal for them to break your window?
None of it is legal. They don't have a right to break into your house. They don't have a right to break into your window. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any videos from Minneapolis, but somebody, a brown person, we don't even know if they're an immigrant or not, will pull up in a gas station, and ICE will pull up next to them and insist that they come out of their car. And if they don't do it immediately, they will bash their window.
So
They
can you
may
tell
or
the
may.
police? That's damage. I've seen videos. Yeah, ICE is damaging people's property. They're assaulting them.
Yeah, all of it is illegal. All of it. That's why I'm saying we're living in a police state, or an armed federal intervention right now, because it's all illegal. And like, when they break your window, they will never, and if they figure out you're a US citizen, they will not apologize, and they will not fix your window. They will just leave. But they literally will, throw somebody to the ground, and then find the person will provide their passport, and then they won't even say I'm sorry. They just get in their car and go. It's horrific. It's horrific.
Yeah, somebody told me that there is somebody physically raising their hand.
John Russell.
Russell. So Brian, can you find John to unmute him?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for unmuting. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, so Pam, you brought up what I was going to ask. And what about the Sunrise Movement there? What role are they playing currently with respect to the horrible thing going on in Minneapolis, St. Paul area?
Well, they're essential group in the overall coalition of people working here. One of the things Sunrise has done is go to the hotels that ICE is in, especially in the suburbs, and they make it really loud and uncomfortable in the middle of the night so that they're
Right.
disrupting people's sleep. So they're audacious, and they go to places that other people won't go. Sunrise is also very visible at the federal detention center, and are braver than some people in terms of challenging ICE. So they're very much in it. Yeah.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. So
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, I'm going to go ahead and let you have another question. Can unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I know you answered my third question. Is ICE targeting protests and the dissidents? And you said yes, correct? And I know
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Jeffrey, on
I
that.
said okay. She said yes, yes in short. Yeah, Ken Jones for number 3.
Your third question, Jeffrey. That's correct.
All right. What should for one? Let me answer my 2 left. What should we do with ICE after we eventually win this war against ICE, for starters? And secondly, has there been any ICE activity in California, especially where I am in Fresno, California?
Well, ICE started in LA, so there's been quite a lot of ICE activity. I think as you've seen ICE move around the country, their tactics have gotten more violent, and I can't even think of the adjective I'd use for it. So they've definitely been in California. I would expect them to come back to California because Trump hates California, and they're really the shock troops of this administration, so they're going to go where they need to go. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the second question you had.
What do we do with ICE after we win?
Oh, what do we do with ICE after? Oh, well, I have no idea. I mean, I'm not one who 2 years ago ran around with the slogan "Abolish ICE," but I definitely am in the abolish ICE camp now. I mean, I think this agency has to be completely dismantled. We need border protection. We need, immigration protection. But I am fully in the abolish ICE camp now. I don't think, even in a new administration, I don't think we can undo the damage that has been done by this actual federal agency, nor do I think we can root out the culture that has been built in this agency in the last year that is completely corrosive to democratic values. Not everybody that's an ICE agent is a terrible person. A lot of people signed up for the $50,000, bonus, but they have been inculcated into a culture of violence and cruelty. And I don't know that you can rectify that without really getting rid of it. I don't think we will, but I certainly think we have to move toward abolishing ICE and starting over. It should be part of whole immigration reform effort.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm looking at the clock. It's after 9 now. How many more questions in the chat, Melody? Do you know? You're muted.
There are a couple that we could bring up that haven't been touched on.
Are you good to keep going here, Pam?
Sure.
Okay.
You want me to do that, or you want to go to Bushrod?
Why don't you go ahead and ask the 2 that are there, and then
Okay.
we'll maybe take Bushrod as the last question.
Okay, so one of the questions is that how someone asks about how the best way to identify your capacity to work as a part of the effort, especially if you have some fear yourself about your status.
Well, if you have some fear for yourself, I wouldn't recommend being part of this resistance. I mean, people have to preserve themselves. But there's a larger question of what is our capacity, and what I think I have found is that people have far more capacity than they think they have. You know, when a crisis happens, we know what people's capacity is. And so many people, we did actions at the Minnesota State Fair, which were just talking to goers, and people thought, oh, I can't do that. And now those same people are like, you know, out on the barricades. So we grow through crisis. And I would say everyone has to monitor their own capacity and rest and relax as well. If we have learned one thing, I think, in recent years, which is that this is a long-term project. We have to sustain ourselves. If you've seen too much or done too much, you need to step away. You need to sleep. You need to reconnect with your family. So we really need no judgment. We need to ask people to do more than they think they're capable of, but we also need to remind ourselves that everybody has a limit, and they are better if they recognize that limit and honor it and then come back when they can. And that's the beauty of having a kind of leaderless situation, which is that it doesn't rely on one person holding it together every day, all day. It relies on all of us. Yeah.
So the other question is about, Minneapolis, even though it's not an enormous city, is still an urban
Yeah.
situation. And somebody asks about sort of recommendations or advice for people that live in small communities where there are, people that might be targeted.
Well, I'm really glad for this question, because even though I live in Minneapolis and I've experienced this from a metro area, ICE is in the suburbs, they're in small towns, they're in rural areas, and so nobody is outside this. And some of the best work is happening in small towns in Minnesota. I mean, people are forming the same kind of groups we are in the metro area. So I don't think anybody needs to feel like they're not part of this reaction, this fight back, even if they live in places that are small or rural or whatever. I think the biggest thing we can do is get to know our neighbors, talk to our neighbors, talk to our neighbors, talk to our neighbors, because when the crisis hits, the relationships you have built are essential. I live in a very tight neighborhood, but there were some people who were very inactive and some people who were really active. But the minute the crisis hit, we were in it together, and that can be true wherever you live.
And it is actually the beauty of the technology. I mean,
Yeah.
you can create a signal network
Yeah.
from anywhere
Yeah.
or with whomever, right?
Yeah.
And just one last question. You touched on this about the Minneapolis police, what their role is, and sort of saying that people on the street had to talk them into sort of standing down and being supportive. So can you talk a little bit more broadly about the Minneapolis police role in all of this?
Yeah, so this is quite a bit longer conversation, but what I'll tell you is before George Floyd was murdered, we had a horrible police department, a very vicious, racist police department. And after George Floyd's murder, we got a new police chief, Brian O'Hara, and he came in with a reform agenda, and he has truly reformed this police department. The old guard left. They didn't want the new culture. He's bringing in lots of new officers. He's bringing lots of people of color into the force. And so he's rebuilding the force. So we're lucky that is true. It's also true that he's not been able to consolidate that project because it was just in process when this crisis hit. There's actually quite an article about him in the New York Times today. So, so we have had on our side had to take a city and a population that had absolutely no faith in the police and help them have faith in this police force again. So I feel like that's been our task, is to actually get people to realize that our police force has been in transition And the more we act like they are our friends, the more apt they are to be our friends. Doesn't mean there aren't still bad apples there, but it isn't the police force it was before George Floyd's murder, and we need to keep working with them to make them be the most professional and caring police force we can. It's complicated. It's a long, complicated story here in Minneapolis.
Okay.
There was one more person?
Do we have another question?
I don't see a hand.
Okay. Great.
Oh, wait a minute. There was, I just saw one scroll by here. Something about, okay, sorry for the late question. How are
Oh,
you
wait.
engaging young people? I myself am young, and yet most people I see are multiple years my senior.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is where I'd say those of us have been working on the Democracy Project all year, the Anti-Authoritarian Project. It has been skewed very, very much toward older people. But this crisis changed that here. I think that young people responded to the racism in it. They responded to the, the armed intervention part of it. And again, I would say a lot of young people who were mainly concerned about Gaza have come into this movement because I think they see, it's wrong to say parallels, but they see things from Gaza in this. And so I think those of us who are older have a big obligation to bring young people in, and I hope that young people will jump in because again, they bring a guts and an energy and a audaciousness to the work we're doing that we sometimes lack, and we need them. We need them very much. So I hope whoever is younger asking that question that you'll find your place. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, this
I
is
will
good.
tell you, can I tell you one story about young people? I have 4 grandkids, one of whom is 15 years old. We're a pretty political family, but he was the least political of the family, and ICE attacked his school the same day they murdered Renee Good, and he is leading students now. And so, it just takes getting personally shown what this is all about for youth leadership to emerge. So, yeah.
Okay, Pam, we can't thank you enough.
You're very welcome.
I don't know if you're looking at the chat, but there's a whole ton of thank yous.
Good. Great.
And,
Well, happy to talk with everybody. So.
And everyone, I will send up a follow-up email to this with the recording. And Pam, if you want to find that link for a donation, I'll include it in that.
Okay, will do.
So thanks everyone. Keep on with the struggle. Good night, everyone.